Welcome to the OAPN podcast with your host, Adarsh Sakare. No bullshit, no cuts. 100% raw conversations with 0% fucks to give. We don't encourage the consumption of alcohol, but if you want to open up a cold one while you watch this, it's not a bad idea.
Welcome to episode number 33 of On a Personal Note with Adarsh Sakare. As always, I think with every episode, special things are happening and we are able to do special episodes. Before I tell you all about this, the speciality of today is for the first time on the OAPN podcast, we have two people on the same episode for a certain reason. Both of them are part of the same journey, are part of the same vision. And it's the first time we are trying this out, and we want you to experience this as well. Before we go ahead and talk more about who these people are, let's say hi to Chirag.
Hi guys.
What's up, Chirag?
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure, and I hope I can enjoy this as much as you can.
You will, man. I promise you that. I promise you that. So we have Chirag here. We have Jahan as well. Jahan will be coming in on the second part of the episode. And so Chirag and Jahan are co-founders of a company called the Bombay Hemp Company.
That's right.
And they tell me along with both of them, there are 5 others.
Yes.
Yes, so 7 of them who know each other back from their college days have started this Bombay Hemp Company, right? Before I say anything else, Chirag, tell us what the Bombay Hemp Company is and what are you all into? Like in the simplest way possible to everyone listening.
Yeah, sure. No, for sure. Thank you for having us again. Bombay Hemp Company is into cannabis, and cannabis, for everyone who's listening, is of course got its association with our very dear illicit uses in, let's say, Mahashivratri or Holi, where a lot of us are familiar with the concept called bhang. Colloquially, this is known as bhang in our country. From a scientific lens, this is called cannabis. And cannabis has many variants, mostly sativa, indica, and a bunch of others as well, hybrid versions. But Bombay Hemp Company is focusing on making sure that we take the uses and the legitimate uses of cannabis as a crop into India, into the world market, because the potential that India carries for a crop and a cash crop like cannabis is immense. For example, the first strain of cannabis or hemp was found in the Himalayas, right? And the whole globe has made a more than $1 billion industry out of this fiber, seed, flower, and leaf. But we are still sort of catching on to that bandwagon. And Boheco's motive and objective is primarily to make sure that India is one of the foremost in this category, and to make sure we manufacture as well as provide to everyone who wants these applications the best solution nature has to offer.
Wow, that is like a crazy specific definition of what you guys do. It was like, it was so crisp. Like you didn't even stammer while you explained what you do. That should show you guys how deeply invested they are in what they are doing, because to be able to articulate your thoughts like that is something else. So there's that, right? So one of the most interesting stories of this sorts that we have had on this podcast, and what we're trying to understand is, in a nation like this, first of all, cannabis, like as soon as you say the word cannabis, different age groups are thinking differently about it. And we are in this time of revolution, I call it?
Right.
Around cannabis. We are
Absolutely.
in the initial stages of it. And to have a group of people trying to drive that revolution and pioneer this movement, I think is something that y'all are going to like. So great, man. Let's get back to where it all started,
Yes.
and why cannabis, why hemp,
Sure.
and tell us the story of the seven of you who started this as well.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think it was somewhere in 2010 when all of us were part of HR college. So we're 7 co-founders, 6 of us from the same batch. One of us is younger than the 6, and we were all at HR college in Bombay in Churchgate, and. What happened is in 2010 we were part of this student in free enterprise, right? This was a club and an initiative which the college had undertaken, and through that, very coincidentally, we were part of, and no association with me really, but we were part of this project called Project Chirag. And
Okay.
Project Chirag was essentially a solar rural electrification program, where the idea was that a lot of villages in about a couple of hours from Bombay did not have enough electricity through the course of their days, right? So what Project Chirag catered to was to make sure that we had a solar lantern that was installed in each village home. And 50% of the cost of this was raised by students in free enterprise,
Wow.
and 50% was contributed by those who were benefiting from this.
Oh.
And the purpose of that was also because we wanted to make sure that these guys actually valued what we gave them. Because if we were to, let's say, install all of that at no cost coming in from them, it would have probably not meant as much to them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's when we started off, and through the expeditions of Project Chirag, where we were, let's say, trying to go into many of these villages, the one commonality that never changed was this cannabis that was growing alongside the streets, right? And that was something that we really took to, and we said, let's ponder over this. And of course, in 2011, all of us graduated. And then must admit that we were all very, very humble to recognize the fact that, right off the bat, we're not going to just jump into something like this. We have to, of course, meet each other, do a little bit of research. What are we going to start with, etc. So through the course, we picked up roles right out of college, whether it was consulting companies like Deloitte or media companies or tech companies.
Post-college.
Post-college, right?
Okay.
Right, as placements.
Your first job. As placements.
Okay. Right?
Doing
And-
whatever you're interested in doing.
Yeah, so
okay.
a 12 to 18 month time frame where we were, let's say, picking up whatever we felt would actually come in handy when we started something on our own. So
Okay.
digital marketing, sales, media and communications, risk profiling and stuff like that. Also, a couple of us started another startup in the course, which was also an exciting one. And around that time, Jahan, who is also going to be here, and everyone's going to see him soon, actually visited Australia to meet his family. And what happened then was, in West Australia, there is a small town called Margaret River,
Okay.
where he encountered only 2 commodities that entire town survived on. And that actually was one of those towns that was progressive in the whole of West Australia.
Got it.
And those 2 commodities were grapes, with which they made world famous wine. And for everything else, they used cannabis. And that was that moment that he brought back to us, saying that, hey guys, if a small town in Australia can do that much with their resources, why can't we mobilize what 60% of India's workforce, right, vested into agriculture, contributing to less than 15% of the GDP then, and that, as business students, was very skewed for us, right? So that was that moment where we said that in 12 to 18 months we will start. And we started Boheco in 2013, 19
Ooh.
January. So it's been the better part of a decade. We've all been
Wow.
together. And yeah, that's the story of Bombay Hemp Company getting started.
So it's crazy. So you mentioned, how you all saw the streets just lined up with cannabis, right? This plant, and that's the scene with a large part of the country.
That is, I mean, there was so much cannabis that growing. In fact, if my memory serves me right, just the state of Uttarakhand, which is in the north of India, actually has a lot of wild growth of cannabis anyway, and the potential of just one state can equate to all of Australia's cannabis cultivation, right? And that's the kind of the underutilization and abundantly available land that we have, where this can grow in our backyard, and it is already, because it's a weed crop. And it grows in the wild and feral anyway. But the purpose is to now try and see how we can harness this entire gold mine that we're all sitting on. And it's got roti, it's got kapra, it's got makan, dawai, everything to offer, all out of one crop. And there's a reason why it used to be a thriving commodity way back in the day. And for reasons known and unknown, it was suppressed over the course. And I think ours is a generation that's going to pick that up and make sure that we make a difference, make sure we put India on the world map as far as cannabis is concerned.
So, I want to ask you this, right? It's easy to tell me what you guys are doing, and I will understand it.
Yeah.
What do you tell a 60-year-old person, right, who listens to the word ganja, weed, hemp, cannabis, marijuana, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then the immediate reaction is no.
Yep.
This is against everything I've ever believed in. This is not allowed. This is against my faith. This is not allowed in the house. This is not allowed in anywhere near me, right? That's the type of thought that maybe another person. How do you? If you had to explain to a person with such a huge wall in terms of understanding this, what would you tell that person? How do you start? I think
the first thing I would tell that person is, sir, are you willing to unlearn? Right, because you're 60. So do you have the mental bandwidth to unlearn what I'm going to tell you, right? And on that note, let me tell you what happened once, right? I think it was about 2014 or 2015, and we were at a farmer's market. Boheco had put up like this nice store, and we were trying to talk to people. And Sunday evening, so there was a huge crowd, and we were trying to optimize for our pitches, right? So there was a bunch of people standing in before us, and we were telling them about the benefits of hemp in nutrition. And after this 5 to 7 long minute pitch that I gave on hemp is great for omegas, nutrition value, so and so, it's carrying a few proteins that are digestible. There's an auntie who resembles the profile that you just
mentioned,
right? And she just with due respect, she gaped at me, and she just said, "But hemp to non-veg hai ne?" and I just lost my head, and I was just like, oh my God, that's where we are as a country,
exactly,
right?
Man, exactly.
And it's been 8 years since that day. And and what we've really been able to do is, of course, from a business and a numbers perspective, we've grown that pie a lot more, of course, a lot more offtake, a lot more uptick in sales, but you're right. It is a challenge. It is a challenge which we have been only mitigating through category creation, having key opinion leaders speak for us, doing some level of thought leadership programs, educating not just the consumers, but starting from government officials who also find a lot of this pretty hazy. So there's a bunch of stakeholders that have to be educated. I wouldn't just say it is about the consumer. And to top it all, the one thing that we've realized is as long as you present data, even a 75-year-old man is willing to listen. So a couple of years ago, we started with a bunch of trials on humans for our products, so that not just are the consumers satisfied with what we can present to them, but also the doctors that we work with take to these products a lot more seamlessly because they can see that data in front of them. So that is something that we're doing. We're clinically evidencing most of our products, and that goes a long way in shooting that problem out as well.
When you said y'all were in college, right?
Yes.
And you said that you wanted to take up a job or a role that maybe enables you in starting what you eventually want to start.
Yes.
Which is where you guys are now, right? You have something of your own.
Right.
Would you be the same entrepreneur if it was some other product?
So,
Or did you become this entrepreneur
yeah,
because of the product?
I think
Does that question even make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It resonated, and I'll tell you how. So I think we are the entrepreneurs we are because of the space we chose. And had it not been as challenging, I don't think it would have been as much fun. This whole grit and determination that we've shown, and 9.5 years is testimony to that fact, is because it is so challenging. It is so dynamic, right? We started as a hypothesis. When we started off, it was day, I'd say 18 of the company when 4 out of 7 of us picked a 42-hour journey in a train ride to Uttarakhand. And we figured out who were the ones who had written, white papers on cannabis. Where were some of the nodal agencies that we would find? Where should we start from? Because we'd heard a lot about the reputation of cannabis globally, but where do we start from in India? So I think the people we are, or what it's the journey that's been, has been primarily because of the challenging industry that we're in. And to each of us, 7, there is a personal reason which is differing for everyone, why we're so vested.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. But there is a common goal. And that
what is it?
And the common goal is to be able to put India on the world map as far as growing, and not just growing, but also being a market leader. Because I'll tell you what's unique about India versus the rest of the globe. There is, in India, the beauty as to how we can take cannabis to market is the presence of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is, ancient text has it that bhang has over 100 remedies. It can solve for pain, nausea, stress, anxiety, insomnia, appetite building, and no other country, right? So everybody in the globe is actually trying to look at this in a medical, allopathic, recreational sense, whereas India is dialing back and saying that this exists in traditional medicine. So how can we take what's typically misjudged, okay, and how can we demystify the presence of cannabis in our ecosystem, build it with Ayurveda, and take a product which is absolutely natural. And there are so many Ayurvedic doctors in this country that can actually prescribe this medicine to all their patients. So why shouldn't we do that, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why 7 of us have stuck, because we want to create Boheco to be that platform that can offer farmers, doctors, consumers, businesses, brands an opportunity and an industry that never existed, right? And that's when we started off, and the journey is that. Personally, for me, I always thrived out of selling the unknown. Right, so when I started off, I was director marketing and sales.
Okay, sweet.
And yes, I mean, like my job was to make sure that we take product to market, commercialize, and Boheco always stood for educate, cultivate, elevate. Right, so each of us, also picked up, hey, you cultivate, you educate, and we'll elevate, right, somehow. So it all synced in very well. The piecing of the whole ecosystem took a lot, and it was an arduous process to do that. But we would do it again every time we had a chance.
Take arthritis, for example, right? Now, as a common medicine, there are tablets given for arthritis? Is there oil applied? Let's say allopathy.
Yeah.
What usually happens?
Yeah, so there's a bit of both. There's
too.
balms, there's ointments and stuff as
To
well.
treat it. There's surgery as well.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, so what happens with hemp?
Hemp. So
right, what's the difference?
Our minimum, like our product in market is a simple oil.
Okay.
It's an topical application where one applies it on their joint pain, and because of the presence of this particular active, it is working like a charm on people, right? So we've had so many people, like I was just hearing the other day that we had sent our products to this place, this building in Bandra in Bombay, and in the next 2 days we heard that almost 6 out of the 20 houses in the same building were using the same product, right? Because of how effective this product is for people that are 104 years old. Some of the first marathoners for India still use our arthritis pain oil. There are people that haven't been able to alleviate their pain for years that are taking this and just in 2 days starting to walk in a much smoother fashion. So I think those are some of the compelling reasons why cannabis and a little bit of it only also can do so much. So yeah, trying to take that to every household in the country, and trying to also make sure that we have some level of an entry point as far as pricing, etc. is concerned, so we can cater to a much wider audience.
So are you saying that is the best medicine for arthritis? You're saying there can't be a better medicine?
I'm saying naturally existing, something that is ingrained in our culture, something that we've taken to for years, and something that is so friendly from a consumer experience point of view. I'd say there would be very few that could give this competition.
And so what is the present status? Are these things selling?
Absolutely.
Is there, obviously we'll get into the legalities of it.
Yeah.
But who is allowed to sell these products, and who is not allowed to sell a product which has cannabis in it?
So, great question. Let's try and educate everybody here about what the components of cannabis are, right? So, cannabis is a plant. It's got a stem which gives you fiber. By the way, the shirt I'm wearing right now is made out of cannabis or hemp, and it's made from the fiber of the plant. Similarly, we've got a seed of the plant. We've got leaves. We've got a bud, right? So the bud in this country, as on date, in the country of India, as per NDPS, is classified a narcotic. So we use the other three components, right? And between 2013 and 2018, we also built out a very prolific textile value chain out of cannabis. And similar to that, there are companies that manufacture using the seeds. So they need an Ayurvedic proprietary medicine. So Ayurvedic licenses from the state governments where this is permitted. As well as the leaves, one needs an Ayush license too. So everything is in the regime of Ayurveda. And anybody who possesses a license for that particular for that particular product or formulation that they're taking to market, those are the people that can sell it, simply put.
Okay. And is it, is it hard to get? Is it tough to get?
If you get to it, you can get it. It's not very hard to get per se, but there are certain alliances, certain on-ground relationships that you have to have in those states for you to be able to get that far. But it's going to. I mean, India is at that stage right now where this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? We envisage a bunch of other players coming in. In fact, some of the best guys, Nykaa and the likes, have already entered the space.
Is it?
Yes, and it's mainstream as far as topicals, cosmetics, etc. go. It's mainstream. Beardo has a whole range. For people like...
It's already out?
Yeah, it's all there on Amazon. Go grab yours. Sooner the better, right? And give this industry that push that it deserves. So it's all there, and it's all happening. It's all very much in the legal, and we as a company have made sure that has been one of our foremost ways of operating or approaching the government, right? We typically say this at Boheco. We could have done it fast, or we could have done it right. We chose to do it right.
Oh, you chose to do it right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man, and you're saying it's 9 years doing it right.
Yes.
I want to ask you like a very I don't even know how you're gonna answer this, right? But let's get to the base of it, right? Going back to this wall that people have built against cannabis. So while we are here promoting the benefits of cannabis, are we also talking about saying using cannabis in the way of smoking it? What are your thoughts on that? Because let me ask you straight up, right? Like today, a lot of circles, a lot of friend circles, one of the main, like the first thing is, do you know the benefits of cannabis? And then it goes down to saying, you know what, that's why you can continue smoking it. Now, first, is there a relation between smoking cannabis and the benefits of cannabis? Second, now as a country, we are talking about revolution, right? We are talking about where we should head as a country, where we should head as a country in using this. What are your thoughts on that? Like, are we eventually going to be a place where we allow smoking cannabis legally? Is it harmful? Is it not? Because these are the first questions that come to anyone's mind before we even get to the benefits.
Right.
Because that's where we are.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. No, I think it's a very fair question to ask. Something that everyone is grappling with. And it's a question that we often address in the way I will put it out, right?
Sure.
So of course, I have no personal experience in smoking cannabis. But for us, when we look at it from a whole industry point of view, we know for a matter of fact that if at all this was to even exist in the long run, it would be better off existing in a much more legitimate climate.
Okay.
For which one needs to make sure that you present to the government or to the regulatory landscape of India a way in which people can adopt this from a benefit point of view. For us, the narrative is very clear. The narrative is that we provide and utilize cannabis for the good things that it can do. And when I say good things that it can do, I primarily mean for the health and wellness agenda. And the health and wellness agenda, according to us, has also reached this stage. So when one asks us in 9 years, what has happened, we say that, first we clothed people with cannabis. We draped them in cannabis. And then we took it on their skins and made topical applications. Now we're getting to a point where it is an internal consumption product for a lot of people based off prescription. So very clear about that as well, that this is a prescription based medicine only. So there is always going to be a value chain that is going to add more and more value along its curve. And according to us, if at all this has to be done someday, the only way to do it for everybody is to be able to start with the more industrial and medical uses of it, right? For the government to be susceptible or to take to this plant and provide it for any number of other uses, I think the start is very, very clear.
I will agree with that, right? Because what else is the entry point? There is no other entry point. The only way to prove the benefits of this is through showing what are the health benefits, what are the wellness benefits, and all of this. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch upon with this is we are in a space where I may say mental health has come into limelight more often than ever, and which has been beautiful, right? And I want to get your idea on how, say, is there a use of cannabis in a prescribed manner to help, say, anxiety? For an extremely anxious person, I've had people who tell me that, say, cannabis really, helps them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on that.
So we currently also have a product in the market, which is, I'm going to directly shoot at how it helps. So it is a stress and sleep management product. It's very much on out there, prescription based. Someone can take to it if they're having or dealing with stress, especially post COVID. A lot of people have COVID related paranoia or stress disorders around that, and for them this is really doing well and doing wonders, in fact, right? Anxiety is another space altogether where cannabis has proven to have umpteen benefits. So, of course, cannabis's presence in disorders such as anxiety or ailments such as stress is very much reputedly known. And Boheco is also going to be there as far as these products are concerned, and they're very much helpful. So in their natural way, not affecting any of your liver, other side effects that allopathic drugs that are there in the market today that give you, even for sleep, right? We have these sublingual drops, which are again based off prescription. If you have insomnia related issues, one can just go ahead and buy that. And it is proven to be very helpful for all our consumers, at least. So it's there for everyone to see and benefit of.
That's so nice to hear, man. Like it's really nice to hear and get these updates of where things are currently. What about your circle? That's another thing I wanted to know. Like your parents, your friends, when all this started off. If you can average out the responses and tell me how they were, I think we'd love to know.
No, everyone had their eyebrows up when we started off. Of course, when it comes to parents, they had, I'd say, some level of faith that we're not going to do something murky with our lives. And like that's exactly why we were very cautious with our approach also. Boheco has made endeavors in setting up a whole regulatory framework around cannabis in the country, right? We were the first guys to be invited to the North Block in Delhi to present to central and state government officials. This is way back in February 2014. I remember the date. It was 7th.
Sweet.
And we've really walked the whole 9 yards with the government to let them know that what's growing in their backyard is actually a boon and not a bane, right? And at many junctures through the whole process, they've thought of it to be a bane. We've actually gone to those conferences and demystified their whole thought process and told them what they can do with cannabis. And I think Jahan would do a better job because he was the guy who was there speaking to those governments. So we'll leave this for him then, but. Definitely, I think the few responses initially, like I remember when we used to go. So when fabrics was a thing, we used to sell fabrics, handloom, powerloom, hemp fabrics to a lot of up and coming designers.
Okay.
As a part of that, we used to go
sweet.
As a part of that, we used to go to a lot of these. Design colleges, and we used to give presentations. We used to do a lot of work. We used to give out some samples. We used to sponsor collections for them and stuff, right? So typically how you would look at business development. And I remember one student getting up and asking me that if the shirt you're wearing catches fire, will you get high? Right, so that was that. And
I want to know the answer. Do you get high?
Of course not. You just
get
a headache more than anything. But a similar question was asked in an engineering college where we were talking about hempcrete and hemp's uses in building material. And somebody asked us if my hemp house catches fire, what will happen, right? So those are some of the initial fun responses. But a lot of people within the first 2 years were, of course, giving us the benefit of doubt that these guys are still in a research, as I said, hypothesis stage. But one thing led to the other. We got backed by very reputed captains of industry, stalwarts in the space of business in the country. So when that happened, people started reading how Boheco is trying to assemble this whole ecosystem. And that's when there was a lot more confidence in the boys, in the hemp boys.
Great, Chirag. I think, like you said, this is the perfect time to kind of get Jahan in. And it's amazing, man. Like, I can go on asking you questions, but this was nice. I feel like I've just picked like 1% of your brain. I must say the type of theory and the type of depth you guys have, I mean, it's commendable, man. So we continue to roll. We are at an interval, if I may say, and we'll just have Jahan in, and we'll continue with some more questions. Thank you, Chirag.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. So we're on the second part of the episode. Like we were saying, we had a wonderful conversation with Chirag. Now we're on to Jahan, the other co-founder. Let's say hi to Jahan. What's up, Jahan? What's going on?
Hi, Adarsh, and hi to everyone who's listening and watching in.
So, Jahan, you looked very busy. What's going on?
Multitasking takes up most of the day, pretty much. So, I mean, there's a lot of context switching and code switching in the industry we work with. We have a common saying in our office, being an entrepreneur is, especially in such, I would say, sunrise industries, is like building a plane while it's in the sky. You know, you have to do every part of it, and you can't crash. So as a result, you know, we find our days starting with an executive meeting of all of us founders discussing what the month holds, and we could end it with what is the next research project that we're looking at, or we could end it with I don't know, what's the next conversation that we're going to have with doctors or practitioners, or, hey, what is this regulator saying? Hey, what is this company saying? It could go any way. So every day so unpredictable, you just relish the challenge, pretty much, you know.
So it's a good starting point that Chirag gave us.
Right.
He spoke about a conference where you all were invited to speak to certain government institutions. Yeah, let's hear about that. Let's start from there.
So, I mean, it wasn't our first rodeo by that time. It was 2016, 17. It was actually quite interesting, and it was one of those inflection points, so to speak. I believe Chirag was referring to a conference in Himachal Pradesh. We were invited by India's only narcotic policy think tank. It was called INSA. And fortunately enough, some of their members are former narcotic commissioners, IRS officers, top bureaucrats, you know, the best of the best who retired and realized you need some policy and thinking and intellectual development around how narcotic policy develops in India. Some of them are now advisors to Boheco, former narcotic commissioners, etc. They invited us to a conference and said, you're doing some great work with hemp and cannabis, and till that time we're the only guys in the country who ever did something in this space. So they had a conference about how to solve the drug menace in Himachal Pradesh, which even till today is hyper saturated. Now has moved unfortunately into the hard drug element, and that's a story for another day. So they had a 2-day conference. All the top shots were invited. You had the chief minister at that time who inaugurated it, and I had a panel discussion. On my panel discussion, on my left is an NCB officer, on my right is a UN ODC, that's a drug officer, and I'm sitting in the middle explaining to people of Himachal Pradesh and officers how hemp fiber can be used to make automobile panels, plane panels, how you can use the seed for ethanol, you could use it for food and cosmetics, you can use the leaf in traditional medicine, you can use the flower in pharmaceutical medicine. This is 15,000 products, 18 in different industries, and I finished my talk. Right after me was, I would say, probably the third most senior bureaucrat in the state, very senior officer, and he was going to give a presentation about how they must promote apple orchard farming as a counter measure towards illegal cannabis cultivation and opium cultivation, etc. And he gets up, and the first sentence out of his mouth is, I have a really long presentation about apple orchard farming, but after sitting through this, I think we should just do cannabis instead. And that was just a mic drop moment, because from that moment, it was in 2016-17, it ramped up even through COVID. It took 3 to 4 years. We worked with that officer. We worked with that political administration. Elections happened. A new political administration came in. We worked with the Chief Minister, the Honorable Chief Minister, even till today, Jairam Thakurji of Himachal Pradesh, and his entire senior team, including excise and all the officials. And we sat with them for several months. We actually traveled in the midst of COVID and sat and wrote policies of how medical cannabis cultivation policies can exist in the state, so that there is better favorment, or better favor rather, for your farmers of Malana who are growing it for charas or ganja and all. Of course, narcotic is moving into the black market. No one's winning. End of the day, India's not winning. It's not going into state revenue. Farmers barely getting a cut. He's getting farm gate price. Your foreigners are taking it and selling it for hundreds and hundreds of euros, winning cannabis cups, taking the genetics, crossbreeding genetics, creating $1 million cannabis industries in the world. And that paradox was unsustainable. Let me put it that way. So that's where even the government, and till today, the policy has been developed. The chief minister has spoken about how they are very, very excited to actually move this policy very soon. There's bipartisan support. This has been vetted by the legal department. You had almost, I believe it is 1.5 lakh to 2.5 lakh farmers who actually signed a petition to the chief minister that got moved into the high court through a PIL, saying we demand that there needs to be a policy for legitimized cannabis cultivation for medical and industrial use. And all of these stakeholders coming together, sitting together, it really showed us the beauty of what could arise out of such a situation where everyone knows what they want to get out of it. The end goal is these types of policies. The end goal is this type of development. And I would say we're just close to the finish line. It took a couple of years. I believe the state goes into election this year. So probably by 2023-24, there's going to be some, I would say, sparkling news from Himachal Pradesh about policy. Definitely.
Wow. That was, and I'm sure this is 2% of all the legal stories you guys have, right? So let's go back to that. What was the journey with, making this entire journey legal, right? In terms of legality, where did it start? And
it started on the first day of Boheco, frankly. The first thing we sat down, we had a matchbox office, probably 120 square feet, 7 boys, testosterone fueled, aspiring. What do we do with hemp? What do we do with cannabis? Is it even legal to be in this business? So the first thing we did was a couple of us sat down and we broke down the NDPS Act, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, become more commonly known for, I would say, a whole different spectrum of use for enforcement, for recreational drugs, that entire gamut. What we learned interesting was the act defined what is cannabis or hemp as a narcotic was just the flowering top and the resin from the flowering top. It deliberately excluded, and it mentions the seed, the leaf, and the fiber are not classified as a narcotic. So there are 5 parts of the plant we're talking about. The flower and the resin, let's put that aside for now. But it was explicit that you can use the seed for industrial purposes, food, cosmetic, etc. The leaf is excluded from the definition of narcotic. As we know, the leaf is bhang. It has recreational use in many states, but it also has Ayurvedic uses, where there are about upwards of a couple of hundred formulations with thousands of years of history already recorded in Ayurvedic references, saying we used to use bhang in a polyherbal mix to help with cataract, to help with diarrhea, to help with digestive issues, to help with sexual disorders. And this is all recorded in sort of historical text. And the third bit was the fiber around textiles, as Chirag mentioned. He has a hemp shirt, and how massive that could be, considering cotton isn't even indigenously an Indian crop, but hemp is, ironically enough. Having realized this, we understood now these parts are legitimized. But each part needs a pathway in which it can be regulated. So whether it's fiber, it goes through the Ministry of Textiles. You go to the State Department of Textiles. You work on different paths. So when we went to Uttarakhand, one of the things we did is we started working with farm artisans to actually collect the fiber from wild growing hemp and convert it into hand spun yarn and to different materials. What is interesting is this was a collector group, and these were collector groups and societies of women who had come together to boost their income, because unfortunately, I don't know if you remember this, 2011-13, there were these flash floods in Uttarakhand. And there were parts of the rural population that were wiped away. Okay. So their villages were laid barren. It was the duty of the wife and the woman of the house, because the men of the house were unfortunately gone in many situations, to find a way to generate income, find a way to make a living. Moment we touched the ground, we realized, okay, this is where we need to begin. This is where the story really needs to begin, on actually strategic monetization, being able to enable their voice to carry through the product. So I'll give you an example. What we used to do was, we used to be innovative about it. A couple of founders would go and work with them on the ground. Once they've developed, say, a handloom yarn, or they've developed a product. Now, I remember there was one customer in Germany who picked up a product from us and said, I want to see the person who's made this. So I remember it's just a simple jugaad. Our guys took out a video call, put on a video phone. They were in Uttarakhand. This is the woman who made your handloom fabric. And I mean, the sheer impact of that to somebody sitting in maybe Kaiserslautern or Dortmund or Leverkusen, seeing a woman, a rural woman artisan, actually being able to be I would say, impacted and empowered to develop something that can cross the seas and reach her. That was really, they sent a strong message. So that was with something like textiles. And gradually over the course of time, it's moved in the domain, the fibers moved in the domain of textiles, composite products, construction materials, and there's more legitimacy around it. So it's quite legal, it's completely legal. It has its own harmonized system codes. You can import and export it, make it into different products, yada, yada, yada. The seed. Now, when you come to the hemp seed, the seed is basically like a nutrition product, like chia seed, flax seed, your superfoods of the world. Up till 2020-21, it was always classified as an Ayurvedic proprietary food or medicine, because the hemp seed or the cannabis seed was shown in ancient literature, similar like how the bhang leaf was in Ayurvedic literature, that you can use it for nutrition and health. But what we did quietly in that time, from 2015 to about 2021, is we worked as the first and only knowledge partner to the FSSAI, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India.
As a knowledge partner?
Knowledge partner, industry partner.
Who gives you that tag though?
They themselves. Okay. They themselves are the ones who empower us with a tag like that. Okay. The reason being, we brought data, information, know-how and regulatory navigation to list hemp seed as a food grade ingredient. Because till now it is under Ayurveda. But now if you want to legitimize it, you want your Britannias, your Parleys to make biscuits out of it, confectionery out of it, they need a legitimate source of material that's recognized by your ultimate food authority. That's your Food Safety Standards of India, or called FSSAI, under the Ministry of Health. So it took us 5 years of liaisoning with them, working with the regulators, showing them what Canadian standards for these food products are, Australian standards are, how India needs to create its own version of that standard. And luck we have it, 5 years later, November last year, is when the FSSAI officially recognized hemp seed as a food grade product. So it immediately unlocked your consumer market, your consumer segment. Today you have smaller hemp companies on Shark Tank, you have larger guys who are looking to bring this into the mix, saying, hey, can I make biscuits or cookies or beverages or snacks or papads or khichdi out of this? And that's the India we wanted. That's how India takes hemp to 100 or 1,000. That's how you grow it, when everyone gets their hands on it. But the only way is to legitimize it. And it was the same phenomenon with the leaf. Because the leaf with bhang, of course, as we know, bhang is not a narcotic, but it's an intoxicant under Schedule E1 of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. It's not under the Narcotic NDPS Act, it's under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. So you can use it as an ingredient to make Ayurvedic medicines. certain guidelines and compliances, licenses you need to get, which we got sort of preemptively from our side as well. And most importantly, when you use it topically, it can be OTC, can be recommended by practitioners. But the moment it is a cannabis leaf or a bhang-based, consumption-based formulation, you need a prescription. Because there's potential for abuse. Let's be honest about it. We've seen enough shenanigans at a Holi or a Shivratri to know what bhang can do. And that's why tempering it through a practitioner's expectations and having a legitimate system where a qualified expert is the one saying you require this product because you are facing a pain-based issue or a sleep-based issue becomes even more critical. That's how Canada did it. That's how California did it. That's how the Netherlands did it. The only difference in India is we have two systems of medicine that is our strategic advantage. Traditional medicine, that is the Ayush and Ayurveda channel, that's recognized it for eons. And now, of course, the allopathic or the modern medicine channel, where there is enough active interest, where you have modern medicine practitioners in India saying, I want medical cannabis or Ayurvedic cannabis products for my patient. Because whatever I'm giving him has had side effects, it's not working, it's working
this is
too strong.
Solve my issues.
Exactly. And the way we see it is the way a bhang-based Ayurvedic medicine must be treated, and it must be treated maturely. It has to be an adjuvant or a complement to what your existing practitioner is doing. It's never to replace what you're doing. It's supposed to add on as an accompaniment. So then, if you are facing nausea issues or sleep issues after going through your treatment, you need something to manage that. Or you are facing anxiety issues or stress-based issues after, say, your existing mental health treatment, you may need something to balance that out. So being able to be an adjuvant or a complement to existing therapy is exactly where it fit in from an Ayurvedic perspective. So legitimizing these channels of actually working through the NDPS, of ensuring that people understand that this is not covered as a narcotic. Your fiber, seed and leaf are not a narcotic in India. And if they are not a narcotic, what are they? They fall under a different category or a different industry or a different set of guideline and regulation.
You mentioned that these institutions empowered you, right, in terms of making this happen. And you said it took 5 long years and all this.
Absolutely.
And you said you are the knowledge partner. Is this empowerment financial? Is this empowerment research based? What is it?
It's majorly
from a government institution point of view. Usually, I want to see how have they contributed to all of this.
No, this is a great question. In fact, I'll use one example. One of our marquee partners, even till today, is a government institute based out of Lucknow called CSIR, this NBRI, the National Botanical Research Institute, under the Ministry of Science and Technology. Their only goal, and as an institute, the mandate is to breed medical plants, breed different types of plants. Till today, and right from 2014-15, we have actually partnered with them to have a research license to cultivate cannabis in Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, in close to Kosi in Uttarakhand, in parts of Jammu and Kashmir. The goal of that was collect cannabis across India, analyze it, see how much CBD is there, see how much THC is there, which is the best fiber yielding, which is the best flower, which is the best seed yielding, and start breeding them. Because what is the biggest problem in agriculture? 1960s and 70s, why did the Green Revolution come? Before it came, people didn't have basmati rice. They'd have to go into a forest, collect a wild variety of rice and try and breed it on their land. And it took generations of agrotech and biotech breeding to actually get a seed that you can grow. So then, farmer has a standard yield, a standard return, industry is ensured of a standard quality. We knew this was inevitably going to be the largest gap. And we realized, since we're the first, it's important that we start filling in the gap as much as possible. So as of today, we have almost 200 land races of cannabis from across India, which are being analyzed in labs across 2 to 3 different states. We have almost 20 different varieties that we've shortlisted. We're maybe about 12 months away from actually having a registered variety that will officially be registered and then will be taken into mass cultivation to farmers very soon. It took 6 years, 7 years, but it took Canada 11. It took China 9. So, we have to we have to work the grind to take care of the tricky problems and solve for the complexity around growing cannabis in a legitimate manner as well. So that, I would say, that is one example of it from a scientific governmental perspective. But I would use similar examples, and I'd use perhaps one of the platforms we developed. Boheco is perhaps the first and only company that actually organized India's first medical cannabis conferences in 2014, 2016 and 2018. In every edition, we've had the topmost policymakers attend and give their support to the legitimate use of cannabis for medical purposes. The last edition had the Minister of State from the Prime Minister's office, Dr. Jitendra Singh, who was the chief guest. It had several members of parliament. It had the directors of Tata Memorial Cancer Hospital, of AIMS, of Nimhans, of Ayurvedic institutes, homeopathic institutes. It was a chock-a-block event, and it was held in New Delhi in 2018, where you had the best people in medicine, the best people in healthcare saying, I would like access to a standard cannabis medicine so that I can give it to my patient suffering from palliative issues, suffering from mental health issues, suffering post-surgery with pain. And that's the same communique we've gotten consistently from this government. And we're really thankful for that the government has consistently supported the industry to the point that the Minister of State of the Prime Minister's office gives a keynote speech to say, we support this. This is our history, our culture, our tradition. We need to now wind back and find a way to marry tradition with modern science and modern efficacy. This previous edition of the same conference had the Drug Controller General, the guy at the CDSCO, that's the apex body of the Ministry of Health that approves clinical trials, approves drugs in India, saying, I want you to work on this segment. I encourage you to work on this segment. I encourage you to bring overseas partners. I encourage you to work with your AIMS and your research institutes. Because when we do this hard work and the hard yards today, people suffering tomorrow can be taken care of. And that is the type of, I would say, omni-channel, multi-stakeholder platform for regulatory engagement we always built. Even as Chirag might have mentioned that when we started, we read the entire book, the NDPS Act, and we approached the regulator. We wrote, I think we wrote maybe 35 mails over 4 months for one meeting. Wow. Finally got the meeting in February 2014. Topmost officers, best of the best. And trust me, I've never seen minds work so brilliantly. Okay. And it was quite funny that we sat in the room with the top officer. I won't take names and positions and stuff, but sat in the room, we elaborated, what the act says, what the section says, what we can legitimately do in states. Can we do it? The first question out of the regulator's mouth, and this seemed to be a constant theme in the first 3 years, is how old are you guys? And it's tough to say I'm a 22-year-old, but I'm ready for this challenge till I'm 82.
What are your ages, by the way, if I may ask, as of today?
32, 33.
31.
Both? Okay.
Yeah, so it's literally been a decade. And till today, the regulators who we met back in the day, we're still in touch with them. We still seek their advice. They may have moved on, been promoted, moved to other positions. But they're still there to guide and support. And being honest, being open, and being explicit about the positive growth of an industry is something, there's a fallacy that the Indian bureaucracy doesn't care. That's incorrect. They care about things that are going to add multi-layer value. It's not just one guy benefiting or one entity benefiting. It's a whole range of stakeholders benefiting. Your farmers, your patients, your doctors, your industry, your government. Everyone should benefit out of this. How do you build a system like that? You can't build it overnight. But you can at least educate the regulators to help them understand that we need to build this together. It's about dialogue and engagement. And that is a clear message. 22-year-old boy is sitting in the heart of New Delhi in North Block getting 3 hours of time of top officers who barely give 10 minutes of time to people 10 times more important than us. And at the end of the meeting, the top officers say it's clear. It's not if, it's when and how we promote the cannabis industry.
I feel there is a big gap, okay? And I want to really call this out. There is a gap between the narrative you're giving me, and there is, between that narrative and the narrative of saying it's the legal institutions that are in the way of making this revolution happen. Now, the narrative you gave me is all of support, of the support you've received and how this has been helpful. But the narrative amongst the common public is maybe the use of cannabis isn't going as fast because the legal institutions are in the way and not allowing it to happen.
See, I'll give you one example. In 2020-21, a PIL was filed in the Delhi High Court by the Great Legalization Movement. It's an activist movement based out of Bangalore for the legal use to get the central government to legalize the use of cannabis for medical purposes and decriminalize for recreational purposes. I'm only going to touch on the first bit because the second bit, as per the NDPS Act, anything beyond medical scientific there's only one body that can take that call. That's the Parliament. And that's the political administration if they find merit in this. So that's a conversation for the future. But when we speak specifically about this, and when we speak particularly around the medical use case, the PIL was filed top lawyers fought the case for the activist group Great Legalization Movement. But you know what went under the radar? In Jan 2022, the Union Government of India actually filed an affidavit in that case saying there is no prohibition on the medical use of cannabis in India. Who told you this? Under Section 10 of the NDPS Act, the power is with any state government to allow cultivation policies for medical use. And the Act explicitly says that. And that's the same sections that we had read in 2014 that we've worked with governments to enact on. So the government has been clear. Now, if the government's done its job, it's made its messaging clear. It is in every article from the Wire to the Times of India that the government filed an affidavit number 1. I would say that's one example of its positivity. That they have said a balanced, tolerated, mature approach towards cannabis use for therapeutic, medical, industrial purposes is the way to go. And we don't disagree.
I didn't know this.
I'll give you another example. In 2020, incidentally, it was on my birthday, the 4th of December 2020, we were locked down. And what happened was through the year, there was supposed to be a meeting called the Commission on Narcotic Drugs held at the United Nations level. It happens every 4 years, 6 years, etc. Now, one of the key agendas in that was to reschedule cannabis and cannabis resin from Schedule 4, which means under Schedule 4, it is a hard drug, has no medical use, should only be treated in the hardest manner possible, and reschedule it to Schedule 1, which means that it is still narcotic, but it has medical use. So as a country, you can encourage its medical use. There were 53 nations who voted, okay? The vote went in favor of rescheduling. Do you know who was the tiebreaker? It was India.
What?
27-25. It was India, Thailand and Nepal that became the kingmakers to vote to reschedule cannabis for medical uses.
That's a big data point.
Absolutely.
That's a huge data point. So while that is the fact, then why is it tough? Why are different state governments dealing with this regulation differently? Like you tell me that you were approached a certain state, or
Absolutely.
Are different state governments dealing with this differently, and why?
Someone told me something very interesting once. They said, whenever you're looking to work in India, never think of India as one country. Think of it as one landmass with 29 or 30 different countries. Every state has its own mindset, its own ideology, its own culture, its own predisposition, its own language, its own demographic. Now, inherently, the cannabis crop belonged to the upper and middle Himalayas historically. So that's why states like Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Punjab have greater, Jammu and Kashmir, even northeastern states have greater familiarity with the plant. A lot of even the political administration, bureaucracy have seen bhang grow in the backyard since they were kids. They used to use the seed to make chutney to keep themselves warm in winter. They used to use the fiber to tie cattle. They make sweaters out of it. In fact, there's a mandir in Himachal Pradesh that you can only enter barefoot. The only footwear you are allowed in the mandir is sandals made out of hemp fiber.
Wow.
Only till today. So there is this indigenous sort of pre-existing history and culture that is very strong in certain parts of India that recognize the crop.
They get it.
They get it.
Got it.
Exactly. Like in Punjab, when we traveled for Project Chirag, one of the things that blew our mind is that how folklore passes from generation to generation. Why don't you try this remedy? Why don't you try that remedy? It passes from grandfather or grandmother to mother, and then further on. One of the I would say one of the remedies was post pregnancy. There was a common folklore to use hemp seed oil, that is the oil from the seed of the plant, to cure stretch marks. And this is knowledge, common knowledge in many pinds in Punjab.
Next level, dude.
Exactly. Now, the irony in India is, the delicious irony, it is rural India that is historically more educated about this crop and historically less averse to it. It was urban India and peri-urban India that needed to be educated and needed to be made aware of how it's legitimate, how it's legal, how a state can create a policy that can even allow you to license its cultivation. Now, how Uttarakhand or Himachal Pradesh thinks of a crop that grew in his backyard historically is not the same way how Maharashtra or Kerala or Tamil Nadu would think about it.
It's just because of where they come from, the history.
Absolutely.
How the people there have been using the plant, and awareness. Again, I think it just comes down to awareness.
Awareness and what matters to the administration. There they know that there is only this crop grows in our backyard. It has latent value. Why not actualize value? In states where it doesn't grow, first you have to get it to grow there in a legitimate manner. So the priorities of the government are not allowing you to grow. The priorities of the government is my vote bank, my farmer community, my patient community. Once you are able to customize and bespoke your narrative with the cannabis and hemp crop, and the beauty is it's so diverse and versatile that you can customize it, and be able to retrofit it according to what a state is looking for, there is greater chance of success for a state to move towards it.
Yeah.
But of course, when a state moves, it's not one person saying, "Oh, let's do it," and then tomorrow it's done. There is an entire system and a process you have to follow that starts from something that doesn't even exist on paper. So you have to literally define it on paper, run it by everyone. Someone has problems, other has problems, and it's I would say a continuous process. But that's sort of why some states have always been a bit averse, but some states seem more comfortable inherently to it.
And for rural India, it's also a cheaper form of medicine, right? Like if you think about it, like
it is.
just generally it is a cheaper form of medicine.
It is.
Am I right in saying
You're
that?
100% right. And there are two ways. Okay, one is the recreational route, that is through bhang. And of course through ganja and charas in some villages, etc.
Yeah.
The second is the classical Ayurvedic medicine route. There are modakas, churnas, vatis that have existed time immemorial. Now in villages and primary healthcare centers in rural India, you're not going to find modern medicine practitioners very commonly. So they rely on the Ayush practitioners.
Yeah.
Many of them have historically prescribe these or recommended these to populations. You know, मेरे पेट में दर्द है, मेरे सर में दर्द है, facing this issue, facing that issue. So these classical medicines come through. That's one population. The other is the labor force, the ones who toil in the fields all day. Their bodies are sore, they're aching. Okay, their shoulder, the back muscles. 8 hours in the field in the scorching sun, it will kill anybody, right?
Yeah.
There are two alternatives at the end of the day. One is alcohol, which is the common one. Everyone takes that, and it's destroyed a lot of lives, unfortunately, in rural India. The second, which unfortunately was a bit stigmatized in modern society, especially post 1985, etc., was consuming a drink of bhang. That used to rest their muscles, they could sleep well, they could eat well, and they'd be back in the field without a hangover early morning next day. And I mean, just look at how ancient science meets modern science, right? These guys have swellings and inflammation in the back, their shoulders, super tired, angry, they don't have an appetite. But once they consume bhang, everything changes. Their mood improves, their sleep improves, their appetite improves. Why? Because that bhang contains cannabinoids. It contains your CBD or THC or CBG, which have shown in modern clinical evidence that they work to help you with your appetite, they work to help you with your sleep, they work to help improve your mood, they reduce the inflammation in your joints and your muscles, etc. So that knowledge just uniquely carried forward and still continues to exist today. So that's why it's not uncommon in North India and parts of India as well.
I wanted to get into a little on the investor side and try to understand, how is this whole scene working for you guys as a company? We don't need to get into names, but what is the how are people backing this up? How are organizations backing this up financially and going forward as well? Like, what are the plans in place and how is it right now?
I would say we have just crossed the inflection point of what the hemp and cannabis industry would be here. Okay. When we started, barren landscape. We were very fortunate enough that like Mr. Tata and Rajan Anandan, who's now at Sequoia, actually believed in us. But to even get one meeting of the time, it was 8 months, 9 months to get one meeting. But in one meeting, you convince them that this is the strategic asset that India really, really needs right now. So I would say from an investment climate point of view, there has been increasing positivity. We're very fortunate enough that we had some of the marquee investors in India, whether institutional, whether individual, strategic, even globally, who have begun to believe in over the course of time in the Indian cannabis and the hemp industry. So where we see it is, and I remember I had done a conference in Toronto in 2017-18 as an invited to speak about what India and Asia is doing. And I said, let me do something a bit different. So I was on a panel discussion. I told them very clearly, you guys in Canada and Europe make hay and USA make hay while the sun shines. The tiger is asleep. The moment the tiger awakes, it's over. And the tiger is awakening. So that's what we have seen from the entire landscape. The investment climate sentiment towards India is extremely positive right now, especially towards India having an already legitimate licensed ecosystem, having credible operators, having a government that's supportive of industry that wants to grow, albeit telling them, okay, hold up. You don't need to grow at enormous scale. It doesn't need to be, another new fad that just booms and busts overnight. We have to build this maturely, step by step, build strong foundations. It's quite antithetical to what the rest of the world did, but they're suffering the consequences of that. That they're overstocked, companies are going bankrupt, patients are not getting what they need. You have this enormously high THC bud in Canada, US, that's setting off patients with new medical syndromes like cannabis emesis that they've never seen before in their life. I prefer the path India is on, and what we're seeing is the investor community in climate is more encouraged about this because the category didn't exist. Now the category has begun to be created around the medical, nutrition, industrial use of hemp or cannabis. And now the way we see it is there's no going back. It's going to grow. When we started, we were one company. Today, there are almost 80 different companies working in the hemp and cannabis space in India.
Sweet.
We, in fact, one of our co-founders, and we've supported one of our co-founders to recently set up one of India's first associations for cannabis companies and hemp companies. It's called PIMCHA, or the Pan India Medical Cannabis and Hemp Association. There's 20 of the top companies coming together because now we realize, okay, now we're at a point that we represent collective interests. And to ensure that the ecosystem, the supply chain is valuable enough that investor interest and sentiment remains positive and keeps growing from here, we need to band together to keep that credibility lasted. So I would say that's how it's evolved. It started from why would I fund you guys smoking weed? Oh my God, you guys are making medicines and shirts out of cannabis. Are you kidding me? Is this possible? For example, we've done this really crazy project in 2018. I'll quickly touch upon it. Just before we went in the health and wellness segment, we had taken the fiber of the hemp crop and we said, let's just mess around. Let's do some skunk works. So we carbonized it. We worked at the university, and you won't believe it. The carbonized material of the fiber was graphitic in nature. It was graphene-like in nature. So that meant it had energy density, it had power density, it had great surface area, and I could use it as a material in a battery technology in an electric vehicle. So as a result of that, Samsung, Tesla, Apple, Google said, hey, you guys are making something crazy in India. Can you send me a sample? I want to mess around with this.
Oh, man.
So that is, I would say that's sort of reflective of where things are.
Where things are. I just sat here for the last 30 minutes and didn't say a word. Like, it's the first time that it has happened, and there's so much more we can cover. But I think, I want to bring it to a conclusion. Maybe I just want to end with what is that one thing you wish to see for Boheco, say 10 years down the line? If you had to put it in.
Honestly, there are so many things, but maybe I'll just cherry pick one or two. I'd say if Boheco is able to significantly impact millions of patients' lives and lakhs of doctors' lives in the positive, we know we made a dent in this world. See, we came into this never to be fly by night. We had all resolved 7 co-founders. This is about legacy. 200 years later, when India has shape-shifted across multiple geopolitical landscapes, what we built today must continue to stand strong. Whether it is building an ecosystem where hemp textiles becomes the new cotton, where hemp seed oil becomes the new ethanol that is empowering our planes to fly in the air. When it is hemp fiber that is going into our automobile panels. For example, I remember there's one example. We had gone to Netherlands. We had gone to a small village, 7,000 people, just to do an industry visit, me and another co-founder. And we visited one of the first industrial hemp fiber farmers in the Netherlands, in a small town called Utpekla. Okay, 8,000 people. Went to his farm, beautiful hemp fields. Okay, and then he said, come into this house, let's have some coffee. The entire house, a European +1, was built out of the fiber of hemp. Everything in that house, including the chairs, the sofas, everything was made out of hemp fiber. That's not all. It starts raining. Meeting gets over. Okay? Meeting is across town. I can't get there. I don't have Uber. I don't have Ola. I'm sitting in the Netherlands with the international SIM card. He said, don't worry, I'll drop you. Okay? He pulls out a BMW X5. My mind is blown. And we get in the car. We're just chit-chatting. He drops us off. You know, the last thing he says to me isn't, bye, take care, come again next time. He's like, by the way, this X5 is made out of fiber from my hemp fields, and he drives off like a boss. That is what we want for India, where a villager in 50 years time will be able to create his own fiber boards to make his own car, and write it in his own villages and his own district, and never ever have to think again about, do I need a service job in the city to survive? No, you will thrive where you are, only thanks to hemp and cannabis. So I guess that's where we want to be able to empower a system that India has never seen before with a crop it evidently has.
Super, Jahan. I just want to thank you guys for like making it here and giving us a lot to think about. And it's really inspiring to see how far you guys have come. And just thank you for letting us be a part of this. And we want to be able to do this year after year, where we are documenting your journey, right? So, yeah, with that being said, I think we're at the end of a pretty long episode, which is really with a lot of information, a lot of perspectives. Thank you, Chirag. Thank you, Jahan, and the entire team of Boheco. We're looking forward to come visit your store as well.
Yeah.
And
it's our pleasure to have you over. In fact, I was just going to say, end on a note to say, you've heard of Super High Me, you've heard of Super Size Me. We're building the Super Hemp Me. And that's why every year we're going to keep coming back to share where we've reached so far. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm glad. So I have a lot of thoughts right now, which I need some time to kind of really think through. This was beautiful. This was episode 33 of On a Personal Note with Adarsh Sakare. Hope you enjoyed this. See you on the next one.